Hello everyone, I'm Anne-Marie Carvalho. I'm a counsellor. I run my own therapy agency in central London. I'm also a family lawyer and mediator by background. And this is the first in a series that I'm calling Bite Size Therapy. And the point of these short videos is to talk about an issue that commonly comes up in therapy with my clients, and to think about some really simple ways of defeating problems that come up for lots of us. So today we are going to talk about something that comes up with my clients all the time. So the subject of today's video is how to beat perfectionism in one simple step. So you'll see already this video is not perfect, and I've got slightly imperfect hair, slightly imperfect kitchen in the background, and the fact that I'm aware of that shows you that I am a perfectionist myself. Coming from a legal background, it's pretty par for the course in that profession. And what I mean by perfectionism is always wanting to be the best, always wanting to produce the absolute optimum product you can. But to the point where you give yourself a really hard time and beat yourself up for not meeting your incredibly high standards. Like I say, this is something that afflicts lots and lots of us. And it might make you good at your job, it might make you really accurate in your work, but actually it's also a recipe for a really miserable life if you're never able to give yourself a break for anything that you do. So we're going to talk about a simple alternative to perfectionism, and I'm going to offer you a very simple mantra that I want you to take away and use in your day-to-day life. It's one that's really helped me in my life, and I hope it helps you. So what's wrong with perfectionism? First things first, it leads to procrastination and rumination. This is one of the key problems with perfectionism. It often causes you to stop and be a bit like a rabbit in the headlights when you're given a piece of work to do. Instead of being able to get on with it, you start to obsess about doing the absolute, the best thing ever, the most perfect thing ever. And it actually creates inaction in people a lot of the time. It also means that after you've done the thing, you then ruminate about, oh, it wasn't good enough, oh, I'm so crap at this and that or the other. And it stops you being effective at your job. Second problem with perfectionism is it's anxiety driven. Wanting to be the best is really all about fear. And when you're fear driven, you can't do as good a job as you think you might. This always reminds me of appraisals I used to have at work. I'd go into appraisals all kind of pent up and ready to take offence at anything negative that I thought I was going to hear. And what it meant was I came out of appraisals with a very skewed perspective, because I didn't focus on any of the positive stuff. I was just fixating on the negative stuff. And it was all driven by my own anxiety about whether I was good enough. Third thing that's wrong with perfectionism, it makes us defensive. See my earlier point about appraisals. If we're defensive, then we are actually not a very good teammate, because we can't receive any constructive criticism at all without taking offence and getting very uptight about it. And it makes it very difficult for people to work around us. Tied to that point is perfectionism is a very individualistic way of being. What I mean by this is I always kind of think back to tasks I was given at work, and when I was given a task, I'd get so kind of fixated on doing the perfect thing that I wouldn't check in with my supervisors along the way that what I was doing actually fit the brief. And so I'd go off on a bit of a frolic of my own, and sometimes go way over the time that I was supposed to be doing it in. And sometimes the product that I then sent back to my supervisor didn't actually fit the brief of what they'd wanted, because I was fixated on my own kind of perfectionistic idea of what I thought was the thing that they needed, instead of checking in and actually communicating with people about the task along the way. Last negative thing about perfectionism is it's all about you. It really is, there really is a massive distinction between being focused on the job at hand and being focused on what people's perceptions are of you. And that's the problem with perfectionism. It creates this sort of self-centeredness, and it's that we want to smash. We want to get rid of that so that we can be more effective in the workplace. So that brings me on to the little technique that I want you to try, which is all about smashing self-centeredness. And the mantra that I want you to develop is one that brings into play the word usefulness. So instead of, when you're given a task at work, instead of thinking, I have to be perfect, I have to be perfect, I have to be totally accurate, I want you to think to yourself, my job here is to be useful. My job is to produce a product which is useful to the people that I'm being asked to provide it for. And what that means is you're actually taking your focus onto the job. It's not about you, it's about the task that you're being given. And I've always found this really helpful when it comes to public speaking, because I used to get really nervous about any public speaking that I was asked to do. And what I used to do was go and lock myself in the toilet beforehand and channel my mind and think to myself, my job here is to be useful, to impart information to these people. It's got nothing to do with me, it's about the information. And it really helped to calm me down and take away some of that anxiety. Being useful makes you more likely to be a team player. If you're focusing your mind on being useful when you're given a task, it makes you more likely to check in with people, it makes you less defensive. It's all about being open and collegiate and communicating with people about the work along the way. Third point, it makes you truly empathetic. If you're focusing your mind on what's useful and you're focusing your mind on the job rather than your own insecurities and your perfectionism, then what you're really doing is trying to step into the shoes of another person. You're trying to step into the shoes of the client or the supervisor, whoever's given you the work, and think about what it is that they actually want rather than what you think the task should be. And that's what empathy is. It's about the ability to step into somebody else's shoes and visualise their life and what would make their life easier. It's ego deflating. And I guess this goes back to my earlier point about appraisals that I used to have. You know, when I'd get a negative bit of feedback in an appraisal, my perfectionistic reaction would be to take a lot of offence and I'd feel myself shutting down. I wasn't able to communicate what I wanted to say in response. Whereas if I have my little mantra in my mind of, okay, how can I be useful here? What's the most useful reaction here? It just takes the heat out of it a little bit, and it makes me better able to come up with a more kind of adult response. So something like, okay, well, I take on board what you've said. You know, I might not agree with it, but I'll say, I take on board what you've said, and what would be the most useful thing I can do going forward. If I said something like that to one of my supervisors, then it just kind of opened the way for a bit more of an adult dialogue. So I found that really quite a helpful way of taking the heat out of appraisal situations, just always focusing my mind on what's going to be useful here, rather than making things all about me and my kind of quest for perfection. So I hope that's been helpful for you today. There's lots of blogs and information about this on my website, which is www.carvallotherapy.com. Yeah, just keep focusing your mind on being useful rather than perfect. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Bye.